This is my 2009 Subaru SGT, and today I'm going to show you how exactly I tune it. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is why someone would even want to tune a Subaru car. The reason for it is that, in my opinion, the tunes from the Subaru, the turbo cars anyways, are not very good. Alright, so from the factory, a lot of cars, because of the factory calibration, I'm not even going to pretend to understand why Subaru actually chose to tune the cars the way they did, but a lot of the cars end up with a lot of issues from the factory. So what we typically see from a turbo Subaru car is, at least those we get down here anyways, straight from Japan, is very rich EFR target. So Subaru tunes them to run very rich, lots of fuel, and a lot of them have way too much timing for their own good. The boost, for the most part, is not really an issue. Typically you would find Foresters, Imprezas and whatnot coming out of the factory running like 10 to 13-ish pounds of boost stock. So that's not bad, but it's usually the timing, and now the timing is what kills the cars. So I'm not going to go too technical with this one, but you would appreciate that excessive timing is detrimental. Usually get detonation. Detonation causes breakage in pistons, piston ringlands, and most importantly, rod bearings. So the detonation actually causes rod bearing failure as well. That compounded with an engine package that most people beat the hell out of is a recipe for disaster. Alright, so now that we've covered that, let's take a quick dive into what exactly it is that you need to actually tune a Subaru. Alright, so if you look here, what you would see that I have is a laptop. Obviously we need a laptop. We also need this guy. It's a OBD2 interface. Oops. OBD2 interface cable. So it's most popularly known as the Tactrix open port 2.0. I think there's a 1.3 which was out a couple of years ago, but for now most of what you would see on the market is a open port 2.0. So what we use this cable for is laptop. This connects to your OBD port, which is typically under your steering column, and with this you're able to read, write, data log, all of this stuff which you need to do on your factory ECU. Alright, so let's get all of that hooked up and then skip to the next step. Alright, so what we would essentially need to do is we'll hook this up and then hook this to your car up. So laptop connected to the Tactrix cable via the USB port, and that is under my dash, right? And generally what happens is you have to now pull the map out of it. So you just hit this blue, let me lower this into a podcast. So you hit this blue button. It's basically, this blue button is just the option you get with the key on. You need to turn your key on, hit OK, and it's just gonna pull the factory map out of the car, and we're gonna get whatever is stored on there. Hopefully no one has touched the car before you, but there are options online where you can go to get a stock file in case someone has touched your file, and then you'll hopefully be starting off with a factory calibration on your car. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you can see the screen. I'm going to turn on the brightness. Again, now going to do some screen capture, because we hopefully going to make this video as short as possible. So again, so I went ahead and I hit this blue arrow. So this one is the read from ECU flash memory. Again, you do that, key on, and then you save your file, give it whatever name you want. So let's take a look at what exactly is in there and why we need to make changes. So again, this is the raw values of what's in factory calibration. So this is a stock map that is on my car. So as you can see here, The car for the most part targets about 11.8 pounds of boost in the mid-range, somewhere around 5,000 targets 12.5, and closer to red line it goes down to 10 pounds of boost. So overall around 12.5 pounds of boost, which is not a lot of boost. So again, going down here, let me show you on the fuel. So we'll have our primary target table. Again, this is not a deep dive. I cannot cover everything, every table that you need to learn and whatnot. So we'll just go over just what we need for now. So this table is what Subaru uses to target the air fuel ratio. So whatever air fuel ratio it wants the ECU is commanding from the engine, this is what it's going to be. So as you can see, so typically we're going to be in this range here. So as you can see, Subaru is running like 10 O's, 9.9. Again, they do all of that for safety and for the fact that the car goes into various markets. But for the most part, a lot of this does not need to be so rich, but they do that to protect you from this table, which is what causes most of the damage. Again, not using any screen capture, so I'm hoping that this is going to come out how I like. So this table. So again, typically where we would run this car, I've already tuned this car in the past, so I know exactly what it's going to do. But we'll be somewhere around here, 17.9, with an addition of about 5, so call it roughly 22 pounds of boost at the peak load. So what this is again, it varies from Subaru to Subaru. This specific car, it has an EJ20X in it. So what this usually is, is a high compression version of what you would get in most Subarus. So most Subarus would be around low 8s compression ratio. This one has 9.5. So the simple fact that it is higher compression makes it more susceptible to knock. So you have to understand the type of car and the bore size and whatnot. But again, we're gonna make this simple, right? Gonna leave all of the more technical stuff for another video. So understanding that this EJ20X, commonly found on eBay as a replacement motor, guys throw it into their cars when they have a failure because it's cheap. For me, however, my EJ20X came factory on my car. My car is again a Subaru SGT. Alright, so taking into consideration that we have high compression, we need to tune this car so that it runs on our pump fuel. On our pump fuel locally, it ranges from anywhere from 90 octane for you American guys to like 91. So what the Europeans would call 95 run. This car from factory will knock. So it's very simple how we get to tune this car. This car has a MAF sensor. All of the fuel and the timing calculations are done based on what the MAF sensor does. I have seen videos where people just totally skip that, but this is by far the most important sensor that you need to tune those cars. So again, what we're going to do now is I'm going to, again, we don't have a dyno, so everybody's interested in numbers. So we don't have a dyno, an all-wheel drive dyno functional anyways for now. Here we have a two-wheel drive, so we cannot dyno this car. So I do use virtual dyno. Again, I'm going to put up another video where I covered all of that. So virtual dyno is basically we using the data logs from the ECU, and we use that to tune the car. So I'm going to do a third gear pull, and then I will go ahead and I'll put the numbers, the wheel horsepower anyways, on the screen now, and then we will take it from there. Virtual dyno numbers somewhere on the screen now. Okay, so this is what the car runs from factory, right? So what I'm going to do now is we're going to cover what you need to touch, and for the most part, the Subaru is very easy to tune. Not sure why some people make it difficult. So first things first, most importantly, we need to scale the MAF. So I'm just going to be doing some driving and scale the MAF, and then we're just going to do a couple boost pulls, not boost pulls, sorry. We're going to do some steady state to clean up some other portions of the map, and we also going to finish up with some wide open throttle pulls. Again, I'm not sure if this is going to fit all in one video, but we will see. All right, so let's move ahead and then we'll start scaling the MAF. But before that, I also need to tell you about another piece of software. So we're also going to be using this piece of software. This one is called ROM Radar. So with ROM Radar, you can choose what you need to log. Again, there are many videos up there about ROM Radar. I'll also put up a link to one of what I made. So with this, we can log every single setting that the stock ECU is seeing. Air fuel ratio corrections, actual AFRs, coolant temp, load, throttle pressure, boost pressure, ignition timing, etc, etc. So I'm just going to be logging what is necessary for the MAF sensor. We're going to do that, and then we're going to move on to some more stuff after that. Alright, so as you can see, I am on an old airport runway. It's a little bit bumpy here, and what I will be doing, there are certain areas of the map that we use, again low RPMs for now, and I'm just basically just logging and capturing data so that I use that to rescale the MAF sensor. So the MAF sensor from factory is very important. So basically, with a properly scaled map, what it will allow us to do is that the MAF MAF sensor, if the ECU knows the amount of air that's entering the engine, then all it simply has to do is that I know the amount of air entering the engine, I know how much fuel my injectors are going to inject. So it's a very, very simple process for it to actually inject the correct amount. So you just tell it, okay, I need this amount of fuel for this amount of air, and it does the math. So when Subaru build the MAF scaling from factory, it's not exactly accurate, it's close, but what I usually see is low RPMs. Alright, so let's just turn around, still capturing data, again just cruising around. So what I usually see is low RPMs. The cars are generally a little bit too rich. Typically what I see on a Subaru is around 7 to about 12% too rich around idle. Somewhere in the mid-range or low load, again it'll be usually around 7% off, and usually in the top I see about 10% being off. So again, just capturing data. So what I'm basically doing is I'm just capturing all the data that I need to tune the MAF sensor. So when I'm done with the MAF sensor, then we'll move into some other stuff. So as you can see here, hopefully I can turn and you can capture it. So the ROM Radar is running. Again, you don't need to do anything. I'm just logging and ROM Radar is doing its thing. When I'm done, I simply stop the log. Alright, so I've already captured all the data I needed to do the initial rounds of the MAF scaling. So we're gonna do that. Okay, this is what the MAF scaling menu looks like. So it's on one axis we have manifold, not manifold, sorry, the MAF sensor voltage, and the other one we have the airflow. So again, we just basically calibrating this. And after I'm done that, I'm going to then do the load comp table and some other, I'm gonna get my timing in the ballpark, and then I'm going to then move on to the fun stuff, which is the wide open throttle pulls, right? And I'm not gonna let you go through all of this process, but I'll just show you a couple clips here or there, and then we'll wrap up this video hopefully in one go, maybe two. But all right, so I'm still driving around capturing data. Again, it's going to be an iterative process. By iterative, I mean you're not going to get it right in one go. So I've done a couple revisions to the MAF scaling. I've done a bunch of other tables, the load comp and whatnot. Again, the load comp is a very important table. A lot of people don't touch it, but these cars typically have a fuel stumble between like 2,000 to around 3,500, varies from car to car. but generally in that region. And Subaru never fixed it out of the factory. You can fix it with hardware parts, but they chose to do a software fix for it, which helps, but again doesn't take care of the problem. So we need to tune that table. That is also called the load com table. I already began adjusting that. Again, all part of me just driving around capturing data and whatnot, but that is already done. So it's an iterative process. You're not gonna get it one go. If you actually doing e-tuning, if most tuners, what I usually see is, okay, let's make sure nothing is coming. All right. So I'm gonna go on the side to avoid this guy. Again, it's starting to get a little bit busy here. It's lunchtime, so everyone is out and about. All right, so with most tuners, you would probably be tuning and sending logs back and forth with your tuner of choice. For me personally, with a stage 1 car, so again, Subaru's rate cars by stages. This one is stock, so it'll probably be like a stage 1, stage 0, whatever you want to call it. So like a stage 1 car is like a stockish car, stage 2-ish is whatever the internet calls it now. I would typically say to get it fully dialed, you're probably looking at no less than maybe 10 to 15 revisions. Some people do it quicker than others, some people, but that's around the ballpark of what I would say a stage 1, 2 car is going to obviously take. Now, obviously also, if the car is more heavily modified, then it's gonna take a little bit extra time. So again, for the most part, it's just rinse and repeat, capture logs based on the instructions that you are given by your tuner, and send it back to him or her, and then they make some changes. So what I've already done so far, the mass scaling, again, I cannot help but repeat this many times because it's super critical. The math scaling is the most important. So again, we drive a particular way to capture that data, and you try and get we're trying to get the fuel trims down to 0. So the fuel trims are basically the tune in the car has a target. So at this amount of airflow, I want this amount of air. That's basically how a math sensor works, right? It just measures the amount of air, and it knows what size of injectors, and then it fuels and controls the spark accordingly. But from the factory, this is not done accurately by Subaru. What I mean by accurately is that there is a math table that tells a math sensor what to do. Alright, so make sure we still log in. Alright, nothing else disconnected. Alright, so as you can see here, I am making about roughly, okay, we have a positive 2.3 correction and a negative 1.5, so that works out to be roughly 1%. So we'll get back to that. So what the fuel trims are is that the ECU has a target. So say it's targeting 14.7, and if it also has a wideband sensor. So the wideband sensor and oxygen sensor is what's measuring the actual AFRs of the car. And if for whatever reason it sees that there's a discrepancy, the ECU is in close loop, it adds or removes fuel to try and get the actual AFR being measured to match the target. And the difference between that is the fuel trims, what we call fuel trims. Some people fall into the trouble trying to get the trims at 0. That is almost impossible because you'll tune it today, weather is going to change tomorrow, temperature, humidity, elevation, so it's always going to be moving around. Industry standard is usually people aim for on the 5 to 10%. I think that is a little bit too much of a slack in there, for lack of a better term. I personally aim for about 3%. You'd appreciate that your car being off by 7% is enough to change your AFR reading a full point. So the difference between like a 12.0 AFR and a 13.0, or 13.0 and a 14.0 is 7%. So I usually go for half of that, at most about 3%. So we essentially capturing data to make sure that the car is whatever the math sensor is seeing, we're trying to give it the least amount of work to. That helps with drivability, fuel economy, and of course power. right? So what you're also going to need when we do all of that is the wideband sensor. You will be seeing mine right here. Again, it's not mounted. By right, it should be mounted somewhere safe where you can actually keep an eye on it. And when you tune in this car, you're supposed to have another cable, a serial cable with a USB port that you log into the software. I'm not doing that today. I'm just using it just as a visual, because again, I have been doing this a while with my car. But again, this is not the proper way. The proper way is to actually log it. But for me, again, it's not my first time tuning this car, so I know where things need to be. So I use this for wide open throttle. So the factory Subarus, I think before 08 or so, had the wideband sensor, the factory wideband sensor in the up pipe. I know our JDM cars and a lot of the post 2008 cars have it in the downpipe. That is the correct place to have it. So, but this is only usually accurate for cruising and idle and whatnot. The minute you go to wide open throttle, it's always off. If I remember correctly, it usually reads a little bit richer or leaner. Richer. One of them, I cannot recall off the top of my head. So the data is off. So you actually need a wideband. AEM, Innovate, whatever, and then wired into your car. So that is what I'm going to use as a visual. So what I'm going to do is I have already set my targets for what I want now. Again, we went over it that Subaru needs, well, in the stock calibration, Subaru targets like a 10.099 AFR. That's way too much fuel. With what I have in there now, the car was targeting around 11 to 12 pounds of boost, as we saw. Right now I'm targeting around 13 up in the top. So should pick up some power. And again, I'm just gonna do a visual glance at the wideband. Glance at the wideband whilst we add wide open throttle, just to make sure it's in the ballpark. So as long as it's a 11.1, 11.2, I'm good. But again, like I said, the proper way is to actually log it. All right, so I'm gonna try a pull here. Second gear. Some speed, first gear, wide open, and we had like a 13.0, 11.1, 11.1, 11.0. All right. That's almost perfect. That was almost perfect. So at the beginning of the pull, again, I'm not going to go into the whole data log, but started off like as soon as I went wide open throttle, 2000 RPM. We went wide open throttle, 2000. I saw like a 12.6, and then went down to our target of 11.1 when it went up to full. So that was perfect. So I'm going to stop the log. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. So in closing, I'm not sure if I captured all of it. Just trying to make this as quick as possible. MAF sensor is super important. Log everything. Make sure cars don't need to be as rich as Subaru make them out to be. You pick up some power, you pick up some fuel efficiency, and you pick up a little bit of more reliability by just leaning it out a little bit. But most of the reliability comes from tuning your boost and your ignition. Don't want it knocking. Again, you do have knock control on the factory ECU, so you monitor that. It also helps to have some good audio knock detection. Sometimes the ECU is a little bit slow to pick it up. But all right, so on the screen here I have the two runs. We have in the Burgundy, we have the stock run, so we saw a peak of around 184 at 6800 RPM, around 188 pound-feet of torque. So again, all of this is right in line with what the factory advertises at 250 roughly. And with just the remap that we did, quick remap, we saw that we up to around 235 or 234 wheels, sorry, and 243 pound-feet of torque. So pretty much same boost and whatnot. Well, boost is up by about a pound and a half. We picked up about, let me see my mass, roughly 50 wheel and roughly 50 pound-feet of torque. All of that is on a completely stock engine, as in stock turbo, stock boost control. The only thing is that this car from factory has been decatted. That's the only mod that has been done to it. So well within the range of what I consider healthy gains for a stock car. Again, virtual dyno number, so take it with a grain of salt, but as long as it's consistent, that's what that is important. So roughly 50 wheel and 50 pound-feet of torque. So again, I'm gonna wrap this up. Battery's about to die, so hopefully this is not the last of the Subaru videos. So if you guys enjoyed this, if you want more Subaru content, just let me know. Just trying to mix it up with the standalone and then the project car build. So until next time, before the battery dies, peace, and I'll catch you guys later.